everyone, and welcome to B3's weekly live stream where we're talking about social listening versus social monitoring today. And of course, I'm Parika, one of the founders of B3 Media Solutions. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Myra. I'm also one of the co-founders of B3 Media Solutions. Hello, everyone.
And Natalie has agreed to join us. Natalie, give us a little bio about yourself too.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm the senior strategist here at B3 Media Solutions.
Awesome. And I just wanted to start off with the news over the weekend, which is Jack Dorsey tweeting, "I love Twitter," and then stepping down subsequently. Like he's gone. Like it's the end of an era. Of course, that was found through social listening.
All right. That's how we get our news every day.
But that's essentially how we get news of like what's happening and what's going on. But
what's trending.
And I was very sad because I love Jack Dorsey. I love what he's about. So seeing how Twitter is going to evolve after he leaves is going to be very interesting.
I agree.
So one of the things that I think why we want to make this more conversational is because we have a lot of clients that are like social listening, social media monitoring. What's the difference? They're the same. And we beg to differ because they're not the same. Though they have very similar purposes, they are used in two completely different ways. So we wanted to have a more in-depth conversation around what social media monitoring is, what social listening is, the differences, the use cases, and why every brand should really be getting involved in that. So I guess one of the things to kick it off is like, Myra, what's your definition of social listening?
Well, first of all, I understand why social listening and social monitoring get confused or kind of used interchangeably because they both are strategies related to listening, related to watching for and collecting information, brand mentions, and key terms. So because they're related to that type of action, it does seem like, they're interchangeable, but social monitoring is more real time. It's more so for listening or watching for those mentions at the moment and being able to respond to it. Whereas social listening is a bit more complex. It's more research related. So it's a bit more of a long-term type of an approach where you collect information over a period of time. And you do that first by monitoring, you collect that data, and over a long period of time, you listen and use that data, that insight to, maybe pivot some campaigns or create campaigns or change campaigns. Those are the key differences between the two.
So if I'm hearing this right, social media monitoring to what it is and why something is happening, but monitoring is more of the symptoms, more of like listening reveals the root cause of the issue, because then you can find out what people like, why they like it, and what's so interesting.
Yeah, one of the use cases I would use here in this case is, for an example, if a brand is using influencers. So they would have a person, a team member, monitoring those conversations of the influencers, and so they would actually interact with them, engage with them real time. And then after the campaign runs, then you'd have the individual or your team member do a listening campaign where they would listen from the beginning of that campaign to the end. And you're really looking for information of like, okay, who responded to the influencers? Like how well did the consumers or the fans respond to the influencers? How many of the influencers comments actually mentioned the brand or one of the key products that the brand was trying to promote. So that long-term listening strategy right there will give the brand information on maybe they should use that particular influencer again because they did so well.
Okay.
They had higher engagement versus another.
And Natalie, I'm not leaving you out because you have been instrumental in so many of the listening projects and monitoring projects that we have here at B3. I'd love to get your perspective on listening versus monitoring and kind of like what that means and what you've seen.
Yeah, so from my perspective, there's definitely a difference. Monitoring is definitely more of like the what, whereas the listening is more about the why. So shaping why we do the things we do, why we're suggesting content, why it could potentially resonate better with our audience. So for example, like really kind of leveraging listening as a tactical way to implement your strategy so that you actually get actionable results, and you hit those goals that you set up initially based off of what you want to accomplish. And with that being said, there's so many things that can really benefit from this, including like learning more about who your audience is, or specifically learning more about how they differ from channel to channel, specifically on social media, and how that might be slightly different than your Google Analytics, and what that means for your brand. Not only really learning about who they are, but also like listening and finding out how they feel about your brand or about your product or the service that you offer. But beyond that as well, so identifying like what topics do they care about that relate to your brand. How can you strengthen that relationship between that brand and that customer? And what content do they find interesting other than just straight up promotions? Because everyone also wants to know the behind the scenes things like content marketing. You know, they do say content is king, and we've seen that time over time. I would also leverage it to identify topics and trends that your audience is incredibly passionate about, so that you have not only very interesting and entertaining content, but also something that genuinely interests your audience. Because there's like thousands of ads and thousands like of pieces of content on social media that it's so easy to just kind of quickly swipe up. So you need something that's going to captivate their attention, be relevant, but also something that's going to spark that genuine connection between you and your customer or your audience online. And the last piece of it would be really just truly identifying like what it is that your audience wants and how can you make them tick or take that desired action that you're looking for based off of whatever it is that your campaign objective is. Like, for example, if I want my audience to learn more about, say, an app that I'm launching, then what are the pieces of content that are going to make them tick, and what are some of the relevant topics that might not be a direct promotion but help influence their engagement to express that interest in my app or to download my app or to use my app. Um,
I
yeah.
love that. I think in addition to that, also the competitive benchmarking aspect of it, which we didn't touch on, being able to spy on your clients, spy on
Yeah.
your competitors, being able to understand doing, what's working and what's not working with them, as well as intercepting consideration. Because a lot of times, in automotive, people say, I'm looking for a car. Well, it's a great opportunity for car brands to like jump into that conversation, talk about, their vehicles that might fall in love with this customer, and kind of like really use listening in a way that helps them to gain a new prospective customer. And I think lastly would also be around understanding social proof and direct testimonial. So small businesses definitely need that
Yeah.
conversation, those testimonials that clients and customers are providing. They can use that to go out and get more business.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then also, like, you can really leverage it to identify problems that your customers are currently facing as well. Like, for example, there was one client account that we worked on that was in the entertainment industry, specifically around customer service, being able to identify how can we improve this beyond social media? How can we get our audience to climb back into favor with us? You know, maybe they might have had experienced some like lower customer service responses. So how can we really streamline that support with while reducing costs? And a really good way to identify that was really seeing how many inbound communications were coming online, and that really enabled the client to further expand their services through their app as well to streamline that during a time where everything is completely digital, while also being able to kind of maintain that budget and add that extra support.
No, I love that. And I think now to switch gears towards more monitoring, where a brand is actually looking at their own messages, their own channels, and kind of seeing how consumers, especially with like doing a campaign or something so they can actually learn about how customers feel about a specific ad or feel about a specific product. For us, monitoring is like key for every brand because it's the only way that you're going to know on a regular basis how consumers feel about anything that you do, whether it be your content, your advertising, your media buying. All of those conversations are collected on your channels and can be gleaned and put into informational reports that can be fed back to HR, to PR, to product planning, like all of the different ways that we've been able to leverage that, even legal, and leverage that social media monitoring, the comments that are coming from the brand, and give that information back to the brand so that they can do something actionable with it.
What's been interesting, though, is some of the clients we've had long term, they've had a social listening plan in place, but it took a while for some of the brands to just really jump in and use monitoring to act real time. Number one is sometimes they don't have the resources,
right?
But they definitely understand the importance of listening long term to understand consumer sentiment. And of course, the monitoring and the listening together to just be able to interact and engage, because it's about the brand being present online. There's one thing for a brand just to have a social presence as far as a platform, but they actually need to engage. And so monitoring and listening helps brands be able to be relatable, communicate with people. So those are very, very key. And over time, it's just, that's the key also. It's not something that's done overnight. It's actually a month over month of listening to really understand your audience and to be able to communicate with them.
I think that is so important because people will think, hey, you can just listen for a month or two, it'll be fine, and then you stop. But it's like, you don't get real value out of doing 1 or 2 months of listening and then it's like done. The value actually comes when you're able to start benchmarking and seeing those trends and seeing those patterns and using that information to change your organization. But it's kind of hard because people don't really understand how it works. So Natalie, like, just from your perspective, how do you feel like you explain how social listening works?
Yeah, that is a very good question. So really how I see that working is really developing a strategy that clearly defines how it's going to influence your overall business and marketing plan. What is it that you're trying to accomplish, right? What are those objectives? What are going to be some of those success metrics that we want to call out specifically? What's gonna be the standard like methodology that we want to implement on a regular basis to be able to identify those deeper insights that we want to use into solving some of those problems. And as part of the strategy, I would also recommend like definitely outlining like what are some of the current challenges you have now? What are some of the questions you want to answer right now? And what can be some potential long-term questions that you want to find out some answers for like later on down the road once you've been implementing that strategy. So I think it's kind of like a three-pronged approach. It's like really defining what that strategy is, developing that plan of action, and beginning to implement that based off of, what is it that you're trying to obtain? What are those unique goals?
And as you were explaining that, Natalie, it came to mind some of the past experience we've had with brands and their social listening or social monitoring requests. They would just say, around these key terms, can you just tell us what people are saying? But in order for this to work, there actually has to be some specific questions on what they want answered. So it just can't be go out there and tell us what they're saying. They actually need to define some questions that they want answered, and in us as research analysts trying to answer those questions, we may come up with other information and which would redirect their questions to dig for something else. So that was one key thing that I think is very important before you start listening and monitoring. Well, more so listening.
And I definitely agree with that. Like, I think I always tell brands, let's start off with a hypothesis. What is it that you actually think will happen? Because we can start there, because it all starts with, if you have a business goal, if you have a strategy, if you have something in place and you're trying to understand a campaign or how people feel about something, what's your hypothesis? Then we develop a framework around the hypothesis. It could be right. It could be completely exactly as they thought.
Right.
But sometimes it's wrong, which is beautiful, because now you're learning, like, not only was I wrong, but there's this whole other plethora of insights that have come up because we saw other things that were contrary to what was most popularly believed. So I think having the opportunity to kind of like work with brands and have them understand like just how we set up social listening will help other brands to be able to think through, like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What are we trying to get out of it? And the next question that we get a lot is tools.
Tools. The best part.
I think that is the best part, because honestly, they really want to understand, like, what are some of the tools that you use to get this information? Because on the monitoring side, there are native, the platforms, you can go native, you can get the information from the comments, you can see it that way. But the tools are really what helps you to kind of like put together a cohesive story through data.
Right. And, when you mentioned tools, so there's a variety of tools, and we consider ourselves tool agnostic. I mean, we've used everything from NetBase to Brandwatch to Khoros to Sprinklr to
Brand24. I mean, yeah, Natalie, like the tool list is literally endless.
And then there are free tools that you can explore with, some like TweetDeck or Social Mention, I believe. But we most commonly use tools that our clients use. And not a plug for NetBase, but one of the very cool things that we got to experience at a recent conference was something called NetBase Quid. And so a lot of tools they're trying to elevate or, just kind of be this AI type of tool where you can get all these insights automatically. But we have not experienced one where it's truly AI. It always needs human analysis. It requires us to analyze the data, to filter out the noise, to get to the real meat of the insight there. But with NetBase Quid, this was the first time I've ever seen a visual display of themes from a topic. And the example I'm going to share with you is around, I think it was luxury cars. That was the key term that was put in. And then what came out was like exotic rentals or like car insurance hacks. So there were like themes that weren't noise, like auto parts or, just the brands that you normally see, Porsche or like Genesis. But they were truly interesting themes that if you dig further, it kind of revealed that those are the things that you don't know what you don't know until you see it. So that was really cool to see. So I'm excited about that part. For Quid.
I mean, I think for any of the tools, especially if you're focusing on monitoring, making sure that they are going to be able to pull your data month in, month out over all of the channels that you're active on is going to be a key importance in selecting a tool, because not all of the tools that are out there do every channel. So you definitely want to make sure that you find a tool that can collect the data from your own channel. But one of the case studies, I think that one of the use cases of monitoring that we've had the opportunity to do is with like a rideshare company. So month over month, we were basically helping them to understand sentiment. And one of the things that was going wrong is that the drivers were completely unhappy. And being able to kind of like dig into their own channels and monitor those conversations and raise a red flag on the areas, the new programs that they rolled out, the new features of the apps for drivers that they rolled out, being able to give that feedback to the developers, to the engineers was immensely helpful. But we never would have done that if we weren't doing monitoring on a regular basis for the brand.
Right.
And I think that is a clear reason why monitoring is something that every brand should be handling and doing. And going into just tools that I personally, so everybody has to go around and say what tool their favorite tool. And I definitely think that we have a slight bias towards NetBase, simply because it's just the tool that that we have been able to realize the most value for our clients and even ourselves. I think it's easy to use. Yeah. And I definitely feel that the information that I'm able to kind of put together from that, brands and any clients that we work with always enjoy it and really find the value out of it.
I agree. I have to put NetBase right up there. Another tool that I like to kind of poke around and see what's going on, but it's mostly for your own content, is Rival IQ. Really user friendly UI, and it's just, you can jump. I felt like you can jump right in. The other tool that I'm highly interested in is TalkWalker. TalkWalker seems like a really, really interesting tool. I just got access, so I'll have to give you an update on our tool. We're gonna have a discussion on tools.
We're gonna have a discussion on tools.
I'll give you the rundown on what I like about TalkWalker.
Pros and cons.
Pros and cons, exactly. So those are my top.
Natalie, what's your top?
Oh my gosh, I would definitely have to say NetBase and Brandwatch are definitely tied. I had an awesome time using Brandwatch. That one was that's a really good one. I would also say up there would be definitely Rival IQ. I love how easy it is to use. The interface is definitely very manageable. It's a little innovative. It's very clean and modern. And then yeah, I would just say those are my top 3 tools. Really, I think my one of my least favorite tools would definitely have to be Sprinklr. But you can build some awesome dashboards in there.
Yes, you can build awesome dashboards in Sprinklr. But if you guys out there, if you have a tool that you want us to review, we can do it here live, because we will be our next upcoming live stream. We'll be reviewing tools and kind of getting into the nitty gritty about that. So reach out, let us know, and we would be happy to review the tool. But one of the things that I think a lot of people do ask, especially people that aren't in social, is the privacy issues. Like, are we getting people's information illegally? What are we doing with that data? And that's a very real concern, I think.
Yeah, and what I can say from our perspective, from the analyst side, and being in the tools, that privacy data is, or the laws are being adhered to. So we don't have access to people's information, their email, their phone numbers. We don't have access to that using these tools. All we simply see is their comment and their profile name. And then when we report it out to the client, we block out their profile name, and it's just their comment.
Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that people understand that these social tools are strictly adhering to the information around that GDPR has actually put out there, and are making sure that even as researchers that they are very careful with the data that's being put out there and the people's information. So if a post was deleted, we don't see it either. We see that the post was deleted. So I think that the privacy issue is being strictly adhered to with social listening tools and social media monitoring tools, which I think is great for our industry. Yeah. So if we have to sum everything up, I guess because it's time for us to wrap everything up. But we do want to thank everyone for joining us, for being a part of the show today. If I had to leave the audience with one piece of advice on setting up your social listening and social media monitoring, is to really align your program with your business goals and build out a team that you can have that can help to support it. Because too many times we've seen with clients that they're really interested, they want to get these results, they want to do social listening, and they don't have anybody to action upon it. You know, you give them insights, but there's no one that can have these conversations, like a community manager that can have the conversations with the clients, but you just continue to put that out there. So making sure that you have an infrastructure and a team in place that can not only publish content and create content, but also go in, have conversations with the community that's happening, and someone that's on the back end that's able to then showcase all of the work that the social team has done through metrics.
And one of the questions that we did want to answer is like, you know, for a brand or for a company that hasn't started, you know, how did they get started? And I just say start with something like a free tool like Social Mention, or like I mentioned, TweetDeck,
Google
Alerts,
even Google Alerts,
and just get started and document that with the date. You know, what your volume was, what was the key topics of conversation, and a couple of competitors, and just, you know, track that as a starting point, as a benchmark.
Absolutely. And Natalie, did you have anything?
Yeah, I think you two blew me away. You guys took my great ideas. But yeah, I would just say just start doing it for sure. Get creative with it too, and just know you can always improve upon it moving forward.
That's right. Yep. I definitely agree. And so if anybody out there has any questions or is looking to understand more about creating a social listening program or creating a social media monitoring and how the two play together, we'd love to have a conversation with you. You can just go to b3mediasolutions.com, our website, and you can learn more, schedule a consult with us. We're real people. And we'd love to talk to you and kind of showcase what we have been able to do with our clients in social listening and social media monitoring. And we are offering a free 30-minute consult to enterprise level clients that are looking to take a deep dive into their social media monitoring and social media listening practices. So for next week, you know what we'll be talking about.
So meet us here, same time,
same day,
different day,
same time. But we will be talking about the 2021 top social media and listening tools that are out there. So join us if you are interested. If you're currently going through a tool review, you need a POV on which tools would work for you. We're going to break down some of our favorite tools and some of the tools that we know are great in the industry, have great reputations, and that we know from a fact from working with our clients that they have been useful and helpful. Anything else, Natalie?
No, that's it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. We loved having you on, and we really hope that you all got a lot of great information out of today's chat, and we will be doing this again.
See you next week.
See you next week.